Today for Coffee Talk, I'm going to be talking about faith, Fema, and prepping. Welcome to Urban Prepping with Pam. I'm Pam. So I'm going to fill these jars. Water for projects like this, so I didn't use tap water. So today's coffee talk is going to be about a flashback that I had yesterday about several incidences that I have had where Christians have said to me that when I'm prepping, or the fact that I have things prepared and stored, food stored for long-term storage, that I'm showing a lack of faith, that I'm not believing that God will take care of me in the event of a disaster. Yesterday I was thinking of sort of the pros and cons, and I think one of the reasons that this came back to me is right now, as we're going through this COVID disaster, I'm calling it a disaster or pandemic, you've got people on both sides of the aisle when it comes to masks. Actually, kind of hilarious. Because there are some on one end of the spectrum that are sharing videos of tests being done when people are wearing a mask, and they're putting a little probe underneath the mask, and they're saying, see, there's no lack of oxygen, and everything is healthy and everything is just fine if you wear the mask. And then you've got people on the other side of the spectrum who are sharing videos of tests that are being done with the little probe under the mask, saying, see, look at the CO2 is too high, you're losing oxygen, and this is not healthy. Whichever side of the argument that you're on, you're going to be able to find proof to prove what you believe. You've got doctors on one end of the spectrum saying that wearing a mask is the only way to keep this virus from spreading. You have doctors on the other end of the spectrum saying that healthy people should not wear masks, that, this is a breeding ground for all kinds of germs, and the regular people are not trained in how to wear a mask. And which side of the argument you're on, you can find proof to tell other people that you are right. It's sort of similar when it comes to prepping. On the one hand, you have Christians saying that you're showing a lack of faith when you prepare for disaster. And they'll talk about scriptures such as when Jesus said, look at the birds in the air, and, they don't worry about what they're going to eat, and they don't worry about what they're going to wear, and God knows every one of them, and he provides for each of them every day. That is true. When the Israelites were wandering in the desert and they had manna to eat every day, and look at, God provided for them when they were in a state of disaster, and that is true, he did. Jesus talked about the parable where he was warning about the rich fool who, was hoarding up grain and built a great big grain silo to put it in, and then, dies before he can use it. And, that is true too. I'm thinking to myself as I was driving yesterday, look at the other end of it for us preppers. And I'm a Christian. I believe God's going to take care of me. But see, I believe that God is taking care of me when he provides things for me that I can preserve and put away for future use. Years ago, when I first started prepping, I have a friend who is a member of the Mormon Church. And I don't know much about the Mormon Church, but I contacted her. And I said, listen, I don't know much about being a Mormon, but I do know that Mormons believe in provident living, which is being prepared in a disaster. And they recommend that their families, and it makes a lot of sense to me, that they have provisions for up to a year for each member of their family, that they consider that a wise thing to do. And so I asked her, what can you tell me about this? Because I did not know any preppers at that time. And she turned me on to some websites, which I so appreciated. I paid some money to get some downloads. It really did help me a lot. And that was the beginning of my prepping journey. Now, I don't believe that I am showing a lack of faith by prepping. And I'm going to make you can make fun of me if you want, and that's fine. Um, but I'm just going to admit right here that, I pray for God's provision. I pray for blessings. My husband and I don't have a lot of money. Sometimes things can get expensive, food can be expensive. We have to worry about, money for food like everybody else that I know. Um, and so I pray that God bring me a blessing, and He does. I mean, there are times when um, my husband will come home from work with a basket full of food and say, this guy that I work with, he grows corn. And, he had corn, and, my husband would take some corn, but in the end, a lot of the corn wasn't taken. And the guy would ask my husband, you just want to take what's left? And what a blessing. He comes home with free corn, and so I can it up. Um, I had somebody at work that he wanted me to do some canning for him. It was like a bartering thing. And so he had some deal on some fruit, and so I canned jam for him, and in return I got some fruit for it. Now, I couldn't continue with that because, I work and it's hard enough for me just to keep up with my own canning. But you know what? I was really appreciative for God's bounty. That to me was a blessing. And so I have no qualms about asking the Lord for blessings, and he seems to bless us. I mean, my husband comes home with kinds of things, vegetables and eggs, and I've had somebody at the place where I work. There was this was a few years back. He just came one day. He worked for the park district. He knew where the apple trees were, and he brought me a whole basket of apples. And to me, that was such a blessing. And so, yeah, I canned it up. And so, what I was thinking yesterday really was the story of Joseph. And if you remember, Joseph was sold into slavery by his brothers, and he was sold to Egypt. He found favor over the years, and he ended up in the king's household. And it turns out that God gave him a gift for interpreting dreams, and the king had dreams that were Joseph interpreted to say that there were going to be 7 good years, and then there were going to be 7 years of famine. And so the king put him in a position where he could make decisions about, in the good years, storing food during the good years. And sure enough, then the famine came, and his community was really saved because of the actions of Joseph and the wisdom that he showed, that they had plenty of grains stored away for food. And in fact, that is how Joseph ended up being reunited with his family, because his family didn't have food, and so some of his brothers came to Egypt to ask for some provisions, and sure enough, the person they went to was Joseph. The point of the story to me is that it was considered wisdom that there would be provisions put away for a time of disaster or a time of an emergency. I can say that, that the Bible says that if a man doesn't work, he's not worthy to eat. I can come up with Bible verses too. And so it's kind of like the case of the masks. I guess it just depends on which side of the argument that you're on, and you're going to be able to find Bible verses and things that will support what you believe. Taking that, side of it and looking at it from that perspective, I don't consider it being a lack of faith at all to put away and make preparations for a possible future disaster. I mean, when this COVID thing first started, my husband and I really didn't have to worry about much. I mean, I saw that we didn't really have enough meat for me to be comfortable with, and I took care of that. But really, the the only thing that we worried about was toilet paper. And so I had to think, and I said to myself, okay, well, if it gets down to that, I'm a former quilter. I haven't had time to make a quilt in a long time. I have a lot of fabric. And I was prepared to whip out my sewing machine and just make some cloths. And worse come to worse, if we would run out of toilet paper, that I was going to have a stack of just, like maybe 8 by 8 size cloths or something like that to that could be washed and reused. It never came to that, thank goodness, but I was prepared to do that if it did come. So here we did. We lived through a period where we really needed some of the provisions that we have put away. And I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think this is over. I really don't. They're looking for every way that they can to lock us back into our homes. And so, there might be a need still for these provisions. And so, yeah, I'm still praying that the Lord would provide for me, and He does that. And in the meantime, we do put away, and I don't believe that I have crossed the line from preparation into hoarding, because I do think there is a line. We don't put away for storage for 15, 20 years. We don't do that. We always try to have a 1 year supply so that we can rotate our food, and our food is being used. It's not being hoarded. It is being used, and so we don't, we're not looking for what's going to happen 20 years from now. That we do what we can to get us through. If even FEMA suggests. And if you go on their website, they want you to have at least 3 days worth of food and water for every member and pet in your family. And they even have a checklist for you, which is helpful. And then I've heard that they've changed that. They want you to have a 10-day supply, but I don't see the 10 days on their website. So, yeah, FEMA does recommend that we have something put away for an emergency. And I believe my faith is not in jeopardy just because I want to put away for the event of a disaster or an emergency. And so I don't think that there's I'm just taking Joseph's story, and I'm going with it. I'm making provision like he did. And the last thing I'd like to say is, my husband and I did have a discussion about, what would we do if our neighbors were knocking on our door asking for food? Would we turn them away? And, the decision we made is we're not doing this just for ourselves. So we are going to be taking and making packets to hand to a family if somebody were to knock on the door. Now, these would be things that we could use ourselves if it doesn't get used. We hope there's not going to be a disaster. But, to at least send them off with something. We can't take care of everybody, but we can help. And I believe that that's what we are called to do as believers in the Bible, that, this shouldn't be just for ourselves, that we should help our neighbors, in some way if we can. And so I hope you find this discussion helpful, and I hope you have a beautiful day. Thank you for joining me.